Hello Block of the Month ladies, welcome to our video tutorial in lieu of our store demo due to weather that was canceled, and we are doing this in replace of it, and hopefully this will help you as you get through your coming blocks. Before we get started on block number 5 and number 6, which is what's coming up for this month, I'm going to go back and talk about a couple tips with blocks 3 and 4. So this is block number 3. And for most of you, it went together very nicely. We found a couple things along the way that people ran into, so I thought I'd go over them so they don't affect any future blocks. One of the things we found out is that getting to the end of your curve after it's been sewn through the machine is kind of difficult once you're kind of down to the end. So there's a couple tips. One is to use some tweezers and to kind of clamp your fabric, and as you're sewing, kind of being able to steer it through a little bit better. Obviously, for demo purposes, this isn't together, but that's one idea. Another idea is to put a pin, sew through your curve until you're down to the last couple inches, put a pin at the end, and then as you're sewing your curve, you kind of have this pin to help you really steer. I also steer it with this hand. And as I'm steering, I'm kind of turning it and pulling it through, not pulling it, but twisting it through so that you get a good 1/4 inch. So that's some tips, because what we found on this block right here is that sometimes people's beginnings were, certain length, and then by the time they got to the end, they were half the size or smaller in size in the width here. So what was happening is their 1/4 inch was getting bigger, and it was making this end not as even as this end. So that was basically the one thing we found out about block number 3. Now block number 4, a number of people were talking about the challenge of this block, and it is definitely more of a challenge. And we also will be doing the same procedure in block number 5. This is block number 5 in the Heather Bailey colorway. So you're gonna have a 9 patch here. Notice in your 9 patch that each of these squares is not the same size. They are going to be cut different sizes. One is because these corner pieces are obviously elongated due to the curve. Okay, so the other part of this block is this curve right here. And that curve is going to be the same skill or technique as we had to do in this curve. So we will go over that a little bit more as we get through it. But before we get to that, I kind of want to go through what's in your kit with you. So this is block number 5, happens to be Anna Marie Horner. And I have learned as I have been going, and hopefully this will help you even more than the past blocks. But I have written in each kit a little sheet that gives you the contents of your kit. I list a description of the fabric. It's not its formal name, but a description that hopefully you'll be able to recognize. And then in italics, I put any subcutting that needs to be done. So for example, for the 9 patch, you have a 3.5 by 14 inch strip of the black primrose floral, but you must subcut it into 4 3.5 by 3.5 inch squares. So it's already cut 3.5 inch wide, so you have to do 4 3.5 inch cuts from this piece. And it goes through each of yours all the way through. Okay, specifically for the Anna Marie Horner people doing the Anna Marie Horner quilt, there has been one change from this sheet. On here for the curves around the 9 patch, we have listed a 9 by 9 inch square of plum fabric. Now we did swap that out for a gold fabric. We had a number of people asking for more gold in the quilt. So we will be doing the plum again, but we're also going to be visiting with a little bit hints of gold here and there. So it will say plum, but actually you'll have a gold piece of shot cotton in. So that's just one clarification on block 5. And now we will go through the process of block 5. So you're going to be putting this 9 patch together. Like I said, the pieces are not all equal, and that is to accommodate for the curve. So let's go ahead and show the cutting of the curve, as we did find out that your cutting can impact the end result. So I need you all to pretend this is a 9 patch here. I did not go about the process of making another 9 patch. but if you can use your imagination. All right, so on here, in your directions, it says to center it between the dashed lines. So our dashed lines are right here. Center your block. And if any of you don't have a perfect 9-inch square block, you will not be using all of the length of the square. Some of it's going to end up getting tossed. So put your most accurate on the width. And we're going to put that width between the dotted lines. And then you're going to move your ruler to the 2.5-inch vertical. So get it in there as evenly as possible. And when you are lining this up, be more precise and exact with your 2.5-inch vertical rather than your horizontal dotted lines. Your vertical is more important to be perfect than your horizontal. These two, just get them equally distanced through. But we'll put that right there on the 2.5-inch line. The other thing we're really learning about this ruler is that some people are cutting to the outer, which I would call this part right here, the outer, and some people are cutting to the inner. My recommendation would be to cut to the inner. If that does not feel right to you, just stay consistent. If you're always cutting to the outer side, always cut to the outer side. But I'm going to come right in right here, and I'm going to lean towards the inner part of the curve and make my cut. All right, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to put it on the white here. But you can see that that's not a pointy cut. It's a blunt cut. And you do want blunt on those corners. I'm going to turn it and I'm going to do the next corner. And again, line it up, being precise on your 2.5-inch vertical. Even all the way at the corners is important. And then I'm going to make my cut again, pushing towards the inner. And hopefully what you will get is a nice blunt point. And you're wanting it to be almost 1/4 of an inch. It's not exactly 1/4 inch, but close. And you want that. Do not make them pointy, because that's going to mess up your sewing process when you're putting the next piece on. Okay, that was for your, and you know what? I made an error in those directions. We were cutting our 9 patch. I don't want to do that. We were cutting your 9 patch, and I brought up a different point. So hopefully I can clarify that now. This is your 9 by 9 inch piece. This was your 9 patch that we were cutting the corners. I had said, don't worry about the length because we were going to throw some of that away. I was speaking too early. That actually is in reference to this 9 by 9 inch piece. So disregard that when it comes to your 9 patch. I'm throwing myself off with using these plain fabrics, but we were trying to use scraps here. Okay, so now that was the 9 patch. That was number 1. We are now at number 2. We are cutting the curves out of our 9-inch square. And this is where I meant to say that other part, which is if you have a 9-inch square that is not perfect, any discrepancies put at the length, because we won't be using all the length. Put your more exact cut between the width, because that's what we're going to be cutting. All right, for this piece, she has a little different directions. She wants us to be between the 1.5 and the 10.5, and she wants our vertical line on the 2 3/4. Again, make sure your vertical line is your most consistent cut. Get it between the 1.5 and the 10.5. I gotta get that correct there. There we go. And 2 3/4. All right. And I got it lined up there. Okay, this first piece. So with the cut, I am pressing toward the inner portion of the curve. And then we can throw that piece away. And then she has some things in the directions that could get a little confusing. She actually puts 2, 4. Put She says, shift ruler to the right, keep fabric centered between 1.5 and 10.5 inch marks, and previously cut curve is under 2,4 and 4,10 intersections. So what that means is you're gonna go to the 1/4 inch and the 2 inch, and where it intersects is where you're gonna put one of the points. 4 and 10 is the other intersection. So as I put this on my mat, I am going to place it between, keeping it between the 1.5 for my horizontal line. My vertical points will be, actually not my vertical points, it's just going to be a part of the curve. So your first step is to put it on the 1.5. And then your next step is to take that 2 and 4 inch intersection and make sure it's resting on the curve. So it's not going to be at the point, it's going to be about 1/2 inch down on the curve. Then down here, we're going to make sure it's along the 10.5 inch line, and that the 4 inch and 10 inch intersection is on the curve. And you're gonna, I had to slightly twist it to get that to happen. So you can see the intersections are resting on the curve, and they are about 1/2 inch into the curve on both sides. And once I have that point, I'm hitting my cut curved right in the dead center of the intersections, and then I'm going to cut towards the inner part of the curve. And you're going to do this 4 times. Same spots, 1.5 with that intersection, the 2 and 4 intersection, and then 10.5 with the 4 and 10 intersection. So you can see right there, about 1/2 inch down, the cut curve is resting right in the intersections. And I'm going to cut another one. And then here's a little trick. If you want to practice this on scrap first, you can. And then take your curves and lay them right on top of each other, and they should have the exact same cut and shape. And if they do, which mine look really good, then you know you've done it right, and you can keep going. You need 4 of those. Here's our 9 patch. You can see all of our almost 1/4 inch blunt corners we have here. I'm doing this more for visualization than you actually need to do it. But what you're kind of thinking of is if you divided this curve in half, or this corner in half, half of it is going to be dedicated to the one side, and the other half is dedicated to the other side of the curve. That's more a visualization than an actualization, but hopefully that will help. Now, always when you're doing your curves, these curves are going to fit in just like that. So you're going to want to, I kind of put it there to visualize it, and then you flip it. But when you're doing this curve, you're going to be matching up this part of the top curve, this corner, and you're going to match it to this corner. So that is where you're going to start your sewing. Corner to corner. Actually, I'm going to move this up a little. So it's actually right there. So you really won't have any of this curve. You won't have it peeking out. It will be equal. Sometimes she tells you to leave a 1/4 inch kind of peeking out, and not in this step. I always pin mine just so it's going under the machine nicely. And you're going to start put that first curve, part of the curve, right even under the presser foot. I'm not using a 1/4 inch foot here, so we're just going to move the needle. And you're just going to, I sew a couple stitches, and then I move my curve out, and this is where I start her process. And you just go slowly. I cross my hands just like she tells you to. And I just really work on keeping that 1/4 inch consistent. Stopping if you need to, slowing down if you need to. I use my knee lift a lot on my machine at home. I'm not on a machine with a knee lift here. And you do kind of twist that bottom fabric to be straight is what I'm doing. But the other thing, because we're working on biases or bias parts of the fabric, you do not want to do any tugging or pulling. Okay, here's the spot. Here's the spot where this gets tricky, because you can't get your fingers in there to hold the fabrics together anymore. And they're curves, so they're going in opposite directions. So this is where I would take the tweezers and do that, or probably my preferred method is I take a pin. I pin them together, and then I can use this pin to kind of steer it and get through that curve while I'm twisting with my left hand. And hopefully that will give you a nice, even 1/4 inch curve all the way through. And then I'm just going to finger press this for sake of the tutorial, but I want to show you, and you would put this curve on next. So this would be your next step. I'm not going to take you through that. That would be your next step. Then you would start doing the sides, and this is where I'm going to do the demo. This is pressed back. So this is what you have. You've got part of the curve fabric and part of the 9-patch fabric. You are going to, again, this goes in like this, so we flip it over. You are going to start this piece right where your 9-patch fabric is. So if you can see that, here's our 9-patch fabric. That's about 1/4 inch. And you are going to want to line this curve up with your 1/4 inch, or with your 9-patch. Okay, so you can see that right about at my fingertips is where they are meeting up, and I'm going to pin that, and it's about a 1/2 inch down from the last curve. Oops, I'm going to pin that there so I can get it under the machine nicely. And you're going to start sewing just at the top curve. You don't need to sew on the bottom curve. You're just going to sew on the top curve. Oh, I took my pin out earlier than I normally do because I'm not paying attention here. And then you just go through your curve. And I'm not going to go through the whole curve. I just want to show you that point. And when you turn this over, you have a nice point, and you should have a nice straight line right there. All right, so now we're at this part. You have 4 of these little corners here, and you're gonna square it up to 12 inches by 12 inches. I'm just centering it in on my 12-inch mat and get it so it's nicely centered. And then all you have to do up here is trim off your corners. Once you have it centered as a 12-inch block, you're going to be trimming all these corners off. So you're going to get these nice blunt corners all the way around. Okay, on this portion, we are on number 4, and that's just cutting the corner curves. You're going to end up with 4 corners for around the 9-patch curves, and then you're going to also have 4 corners for up at the top portion and bottom portion. But to do that, all you have to do, we've done this before, you're going to first make your mark, and she said 5.5 inches this time. So we make a mark at the 5.5 inch, swing this around. That's why I like my little turntable. And you're going to do 5.5 inches here. And then what you do for your cut is put that 5.5 inch mark you made right in the center of your curve, and then your corner goes in the center on the other side. Again, cutting towards the inner part of the curve, make your cut. You can layer 4 pieces at a time, or 2 pieces. I think you'll need 2. You have 2 of 2 different fabrics. You can lay them on top of each other and do all your cuts at once, as long as you are careful and can get accurate cuts. Pretty much the gist of this block.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
That's pretty much the gist of this block. You're going to add these straight edges on. You're going to cut some corners. Pretty easy. She is going to have you line up at intersections again. So 5, 6 would be the 5-inch, 6-inch line. So you're going to be lining up on that. And that should put your block number 5 together nicely. Now, block number 6. Excuse me, block number 6 is right here. You can see the pinwheel in the center. It's actually a very fun and easy block to put together. I'm going to go quickly through a couple of the points of this block. You are going to have a 6-inch square. You're going to have a lot of 6-inch squares. In fact, in your kit, number 6, there is some subcutting. Again, that little sheet will explain that all to you. But you will have a 6-inch by width of fabric panel that you need to cut up into 6-inch squares. And then you'll have one extra 6-inch square that's already been cut for you because you needed a total of 8. And then you just take this square and you're just going to cut it in half and go into triangles, so diagonally cut it. And then she wants you to cut a 1/2 inch off of each of the points. And so the easiest way to do that is I just took the 5.5 inch mark because this was a 6.5 inch square. I took the 5.5 inch mark and 5.5 inches here, 5.5 inches here, put it on the corner, and that would reveal a 1/2 inch point on each side, and you just make your clip cuts, and that clips it down. And so now you have a triangle with blunt ends, and the purpose for that is because you are going to be using this point and this point to make a curve cut. So for that, she has you lining it up.
No, it's fine. It's really easy. Just take that part out.
Okay. All right. So she has you cutting this curve. You are going to be positioning your quick curve ruler over what she's calling the modified triangle. And you're going to be putting the curve on the points. So those points that I had pointed out earlier, a second ago, that point and that point, you're going to put in your curve. So it should be in the dead center of the curve there. Move your ruler, dead center of the curve there. You might have to go make sure that they're both there before you make your cut. And then cut to the inside, especially the inside on this cut. Because what it will do is it will give you a nice cut, which I didn't get because I was sitting down rather than standing up. I actually think I can salvage this. My ruler slipped because I was sitting down. I can't cut sitting down. Okay, that was much better. So you can see I still have my nice blunt points where I did my curve. So you've got your 1/2 inch blunt ends and then your curve in the middle. And then the next step you're going to have to do is similar to the one we just got done doing. You're going to take your 5 inch by 8 inch piece and you're going to make a 5 inch mark. This time, not 5.5, 5 inch. On that side, 5 inch on this side. And then you're going to cut your curves, putting the mark you made in the middle of that grid in the point of this rectangle in the center of that. Cutting your curve again to the inside. And now you're going to be placing these together, so that they come together to make what would be half square triangles with a curve. One additional thing that's a little bit new is when you are sewing these curves together, like that, she's actually having you start this top curve down about 1/2 inch. So I measured, or I'm eyeballing, you can measure a 1/2 inch right there, and then you can even pin it. And then you can sew your curve. Okay, this step, we've got our curve sewn. It's wrinkled, sorry, I haven't been taking things to the iron. I am cheating, I have a 4.5 inch square. It makes it very easy. This can be done. We've actually done this same exact procedure in a past block. But all you're doing is you're putting the point right on the seam line there, the point right on the seam line here. So that when you are done, that seam line should be right intersecting each corner. And then you just cut the top and sides. Swing this around. Oops, I slid. Line it back up. Okay, and that should give you a half square triangle. You can see that the seam line is intersecting the points right there. And all you're doing next is sewing these together square to square. Make sure that you're putting that pinwheel in the center so that you're using this layout to get the nice block with the pinwheel in the center. Otherwise, that is all that we have for you for block 5 and block 6. I hope you enjoy your time. Hopefully you can get your blocks done during the holidays. If you have any questions, feel free to stop in and I'll do what I can to help you. Thank you. Have a great holiday season.